Who are you?
My name is Shaurya Pandey. I'm with two of my colleagues, Gregorio Davico and Rety Lubala. I'd like to first introduce Westminster Business Consultants. So we are a junior enterprise within the University of Westminster since 1995. We have been operating ever since, year by year. Different students from different years have been taking up various positions. Just to give a brief overview of our organization, we have a core team that reports to the board of directors, who are key faculty members within the business school. The core team usually comprises of the managing director. You have an international manager, business development manager, marketing, HR, and project manager. Within this, we recruit students from within the business school. We train them to work on real-life projects with clients. These clients can range from startups to SMEs and even large organizations that we have worked in the past with, some of which include Microsoft, KPMG. We've also worked with Mayor of London. These are some examples. A huge focus of Westminster Business Consultants is towards the international side and towards expanding this movement across the UK. So we have a dedicated team, which is the international department, that focuses on these aspects, and they ensure that this student-led organization or this concept is adopted within other universities as well. And for this, I'd like to pass it on to Rety, who will give you further insight into this.
So yeah, I'm Rety. So WBC, Westminster Business Consultants, is part of JADE, which stands for the Junior Association of Development in Europe. JADE is the European Confederation of all the junior enterprises. So what they do, they're actually an umbrella company under which all the junior enterprises in Europe, in several countries, now they actually have 14 countries and more than 280 junior enterprises all over Europe. So the main concept is the junior enterprise, which is actually based on learning by doing. And it gives the opportunity to students to make mistakes, but learn while doing those mistakes, but also to have the safety net of working as a student on real-life projects, as Shaurya said, but obviously to build on a professional profile and to have a good experience, obviously. Now, JADE organizes several events to bring together all those junior enterprises during the year. Last year, and actually this year as well, we were awarded the most international junior enterprise, and Gregorio will talk more about this.
My name is Gregorio Davico. Thanks, Rety. So as Rety said, this JADE organises these events, and there are 5 European awards for which you can be shortlisted. We've been shortlisted for the most international junior enterprise that recognise the international success of the junior enterprise. So you can apply and you get shortlisted. As international success, it means how many key partnerships you can seal worldwide, how many international projects you manage to get and complete successfully. And we also played on the fact that we have a very international team, so we have 27 nationalities overall within 58 consultants, and we speak 31 languages, so we played on that fact. So in Brussels, we've been shortlisted for these awards. So me and Rety went on the stage and we had a presentation to defend this title.
In competing with mainstream companies, how would you say that your organisation is able to compete successfully?
Internationally?
Internationally, first off, is, as what Rety mentioned, is we have the backing and support of this umbrella organization called JADE. So that gives us access already to 14 countries, and there are more than 280 junior enterprises that come along with it. So in order to compete successfully internationally, if we do have a project or if we do have to get in touch with somebody in some city, we have access to that, and that allows us to be efficient if we have, for example, a client that wants to work in France, suppose in Paris, wants to introduce new products from the UK. We have people in France, in Paris specifically, who have the expertise, who have the local knowledge to introduce those products. So it's just an email away, a call away, that we contact them, we tell them the information, and likewise we can work together. So in this manner, it makes us really competent internationally.
Are you more competitive in the area of youth marketing, youth products, because of your age?
It depends, because it depends from project to project. We have had, for example, recently we had a client that wanted to do beauty products, cosmetics from Germany, and they wanted to bring it to the UK, and we had to then. Our understanding was obviously very much focused towards the youth 18 to 25, 18 to 30. However, they also wanted some of it from 30 plus or probably 40 plus. So obviously that got us thinking on how we should best market the product, and in addition to obviously seeing the regulations for bringing in the products into the UK. So whether it is going down Oxford Street and then doing a sample testing, for example, or even doing a questionnaire with potential customers and asking them how they like it and what products are they looking for, it changes the entire way of how we do it. But then obviously if we have projects that are more focused on the youth centric, so if you've had a startup where, for example, if there's a startup for students who are looking for accommodation, but they need to secure accommodation or get a good review. In that sense, anything that's student-centric is our main domain, like as mentioned.
What are your ages?
So I'm 21.
25.
And I'm 22.
Okay.
Which win have you been most proud of?
Which win? If it's definitely this year's. Since last year, the changes that we have made for WBC, so we changed our logo, we did a complete rebranding of our corporate image. We recruited our team to a team of 58, as mentioned by Craig. We made sure that we tackle all the hurdles that we have had in the past. We applied for the most international junior enterprise. We made sure that we push ourselves even more this time. We make sure that we seeked a lot of international projects this year as well. Did a lot of international partnerships, again as mentioned. So we really did expand internationally, and this is something that I'm really proud of as a win, if I would consider it.
Rety, who inspired you most?
Well, for me, it was more to be, first of all, part of WBC, Westminster Business Consultants. It was more the previous managing director who actually pushed me to be involved in the junior enterprise, which is actually a student-led organization. So I wanted to feel part of something, but then something that could affect someone else. In this case, it is obviously affecting the employability of students. But besides it, in terms of the human development or just the human stories in general, I would say that someone as Akon, as I mentioned, it is an American artist who had the idea to create something in Africa that basically gives electricity to the local population just by giving them a pitch of football, very simple, and while people are actually using the pitch or playing on that pitch, it basically generates electricity for the local population. And if you think about it, electricity it's basically the main thing that you need for development, because it will contribute to everything that you do in a daily life. Yeah.
What about you, Gregorio? Who has inspired you, and what is your big idea of the future?
Right, who inspired me in what I'm achieving and what I want to do? I think is always the family support. I mean, coming from Italy, the family is always very important, and I think that my inspiration comes from my family because they're always the one they've supported me, despite being far away most of the time. My father my granddad, my uncle, my mum, they're always the one that inspired me, and they helped me to focus and be committed on what I do all the time, like telling me fight for what you want, obviously politely, not just properly fighting, but
have you ever lost your way and been helped by somebody who has put you back on your
you always balance
path?
on the side and
Yes.
on the other side, and then you always find some, and for instance again is always the family, always done, always be in touch with them. It's the thing that at most helped me to go back and try. So I would say my family. To be more inspired in the movement that we are part of, I think the person that enhanced my passion for it is Rety, because I had to do with him loads of time, like mainly with him. And I was interested in the movement. I just joined recently, in theory, like I'm the youngest that joined the movement. Also because I studied abroad, so I was like, okay, I'm going to wait 1 more year. And then I joined, and I liked the movement, right? But then having to do with all of these, you enhance your passion, plus having to do with him, who is very passionate, with him as well, but I had to do more with Rety, so he's the guy who enhanced the passion even more. Plus attending these meetings, having to do with all these young entrepreneurs that you have to do with loads of smart people, and this gathering, this groups, these conferences, they just enhance the passion even more. So it's a whole thing that increased passion for this movement. And what was the other?
Your big idea.
A big idea that
going to change our world, or is already changing our world.
Well,
what do you have your eye on?
In technological revolution that we experimented for about 10-ish years now, mainly. Biggest focus is like in the last 10 years. So with the introduction of fast internet, 3G, smartphones, Skype, these are the things that for me, they kicked off the last wave of globalization, the main last wave of globalization, because the world is becoming more globalized, the markets are becoming more globalized, the dynamics as well, so people are traveling constantly, so they need to be in touch all the time within each other, and that's what helps that, and what allows the business to be 24 hours, to entrepreneurship to be implemented and successful at its most, because you can always be in touch, you can always ask, you always have meetings via Skype, even if not physically with the other people. So I think that's what comes to my mind for having a big impact on the today's community and today's business world, today's everything, also in science and in everything, literally. Yeah.
Shaurya,
Yes.
what about you? Who's inspired you in your life?
Personally, it has been my father, because he is also an entrepreneur. He started out obviously by himself with very little money that he borrowed from his father. He came to a city in Mumbai by himself, came to study, and after graduating he did only one job, after which he chose to leave the job and start something by himself. So he went on to do this, and obviously the story that he has told me, it's a long story, but long thing short, he has made everything for himself by himself, and that really inspires me. He's been through ups and downs, but he's still sustained through all of it. And also personally, if I'm also ever in doubt regarding the path that I'm taking, I have somebody who I can always bounce it off. Anything that I have, any doubt, any fear that I have. So it's a sense of security that I have him around, and also he does imbibe a lot of confidence in me by telling me to take some more risks. There's no harm. You're young right now. If you won't learn anything if you don't take the risk, or you take the leap of faith, let's say. So personally, that would be one person that really inspires me.
What do you think holds a person back in not taking that leap of faith?
The fact that it depends on the situation. So taking the leap of faith, I think it depends on whether, for example, they know that they have a safety option, for example. They won't take the leap of faith. So for example, let's give a hypothetical situation. I can apply for a job, that's a safety option. Or if I really want to go for a startup and I really want to do that, that's my leap of faith. I have to take the risk of sacrificing of not applying for a job, but immediately working on the idea.
So that's on a practical
on
level.
a practical level.
What about the emotional side? What do you think you need to tell yourself before you jump?
I think you just need to take a deep breath.
It's never too late. And,
I think it's never too late to
never give up.
I think it's more being afraid of something that is new.
Yeah.
People don't used to, they're just not used to go towards something that is new. So they're scared and they want to stay in a comfort zone. So as you said, I think it's more just going for something that you don't know if it's sure, but you still go for it and take the risk.
So you put the fear to one side.
Exactly, yeah.
You do put the fear to one side, but you do use the fear to push you, I think. Fear is good, not too much of it. If you have fear to some extent, fear will push you to do something or to take that jump, let's say. But if you don't have fear, you're going to be very relaxed, I think, unless you really have the drive in you.
Yeah, as well.
Are there any examples in your young lives where you've overcome fear, you've made yourself do something that was absolutely terrifying?
I can give an example, but it's not very terrifying. But it's as a part of my degree, but this is a bit more academic. I had the choice to go on a year abroad. I'm from India, so I'm already technically on my year. I'm studying abroad, but then I had the chance to study in Australia, and I wasn't too keen on it at first. But then I didn't know anybody out there. There was no family. Take the flight by myself. This was a proper experience going abroad to an unknown territory by yourself. And at first it was extremely intimidating because it's a 30-hour flight from a 30-hour travel journey from London. So you're going, 3 stops on the way. You finally reach the city, and you don't know anybody. It's midnight. Obviously London I knew a bit, but Sydney out here you don't know anybody, and that's very intimidating. And that is what I think is a leap of faith, because you trust yourself, you take a deep breath and you just go for it, because the worst thing that will happen is you'll have to call somebody, you'll have to seek help. But at the end, when I look back at it, I'm glad that I took this risk and I went for the year abroad. I traveled by myself, because when I was there by myself alone, I got to learn more than what I would have done probably back here in London in
With
that
a
1 year.
support system around you.
Exactly. So this is an example, but not the perfect example for probably risking.
I think it's a good example, because also what I can take the same example, because when I finished high school when I was 19 in Italy, and then I decided, there we go, adventure. And I came here, but I didn't know anybody, literally anybody here. So you come on your own. Obviously the first couple of months you're always alone. It was around Christmas time as well. I was Skyping my family, they were all there, and I was alone. Looking for a job, because you have to sustain yourself, because I always wanted to maintain myself. So you're there, and there are moments where you say, no, I can't do it, I'm just going back home. Because obviously, you have to sustain yourself, your savings obviously go down, and you're looking for a job, but you don't know anybody, and also if you start working, I don't know, in a restaurant, like it happened to me, because I was 19, and you just take whatever comes, and you don't know anybody, you never go out, so all the time you're just alone, watching movies, watching series, because you're not that confident yet. But then you just push yourself, no, you wanted these, you have to chop, you're extrovert, you're not shy, so just go ahead, and that's, you take the risk, you just open up. And then I did it again when I went, as well as Shaurya did, I went to study abroad as well, so I changed 2 countries again. I went there knowing nobody. But it was easier, because the second time, you had the experience already, so you just extrovert, just go throw yourself. There we go, went the first day already, just trying to look for some group meetings or whatever, so you start meeting somebody already, just open up, and then it was much easier the second time. But again, it's another challenge.
Still a process that you go
That's
through.
the first one coming to my mind, because he pulled it out. But surely there's others.
Exactly. For me, it's the exact same thing. Because I studied, my first language is French, but then I studied in Dutch, and I decided to come to London to study in English. So I had a few different languages, obviously, in my head, because in Belgium, when you study in Dutch, you have compulsory languages that you have to basically they teach you in school, like German and English and French and Dutch itself. So coming to London was literally, for me, it was weird. But yeah, I had to do it because I wanted to do it. I knew the risk, but still, I knew that if I do it, it will be good for me. Even if it's not a language that I know, even if it's not my first language, even if it's not my second language because I studied in Dutch. So yeah, I took the risk, and it's very similar to what they said. You come in the country a bit lost the first months, but then you get used to it eventually.
I think also the thing of the language is quite, quite challenging as well, because you come to a country, it's not your first language nor the second maybe. So as you did in England, I mean, you went to English-speaking countries, right? So,
I didn't really.
But still, I mean, it's not your first. So I went to England and then I went to Spain, so again I had to start again with another language and study university, 4 modules in a different language, as he did as well. So that's another adding to the.
Rety, what advice would you give to kids thinking about setting out on a journey like yours?
Well, personally, I enjoy languages. So my journey was based on the fact of learning new languages and new cultures. So for someone that is attracted to that kind of aspect, I would say that it's the best thing to do. Traveling, learning new things, new languages, new cultures, and meeting other people is very important to actually be very extrovert, but also to discover new things. So my advice would be to travel a lot, and to don't hold yourself to discover things.
Gregorio?
Get out of the comfort zone as much as you can. Just be confident. You live only once, so just experiment new people, new cultures, as Rety said. I mean, that's also my passion as well as his. It's probably Shaurya as well. So I'm very passionate for meeting new people, new cultures, learning new languages as much as I can. Come off from the comfort zone, get challenged, So that's my suggestion. Never give up and just come out of the comfort zone. Don't worry, just try. Go ahead. What you feel is coming from your heart and what you want to achieve.
Shaurya?
Like we discussed earlier, I think leap of faith. If you have to, you should take some amount of risk. Obviously, you assess the risk before you do something, and obviously, never stop learning. I think you might be, I don't know, in your 20s, 30s, 40s. You never stop learning, and one more thing that I've learned personally through this experience the last 4 years is that try to meet as many different people as possible, because you learn more about yourself and about the other person as well. Because, for example, if I'm speaking to only a group of friends from India, it's like a bubble. You need to get out of that bubble. You need to meet somebody who's been speaking different languages, has been living in different countries, different cities as well, probably. The way that really impacts you, and that way you learn more about them, that culture, that local thing. And at the same time, when you travel or when you go back, you'll see the difference, because when you go back home, you go back to that same bubble probably, and then you'll see that people are still the same, they're doing the same things, but then you have learned so much just because you have taken the effort and the initiative to speak, have a conversation, learn more, and at the same time you become more of a global citizen, wrapping it up, because you're in a global environment right now.
Gregorio, at the moment you're with Westminster Business Consultants. Do you have a 5-year plan?
Oh, well, I have many things in my mind, to be honest. Some of them I don't even want to disclose them because they are like idea projects, so I don't want to talk too much in advance. Is going to bring bad luck. So maybe 5 years is, I could say 3. Maybe 5 is a bit longer, because you never know what happens in life. As we said, the world is becoming global, but as well as dynamic. So you never know what changes, what proposal, what offers you're going to get. So you might have a 5-year plan. They say, okay, I want to work for that company in 2 years. Meanwhile, trying to develop these ideas that we have 3 together, for instance. and throw myself in that and trying to implement these with something else. But then you might have an offer in Kuala Lumpur, so everything changes. So yeah, I have a sort of, but you cannot say, because I like to have things programmed, despite being ready for changes at any time if they are worth.
So you have plans within reason.
Exactly.
But there's enough agility there, flexibility
exactly. Because I'm very open to changes, because yeah, you need to be open to changes and to new proposals, new offers, because as we said, everything's more dynamic at the moment. So have a plan, but be ready to change it and be flexible as well.
What about you, Rety?
Well, for me, it's a bit the same thing. 5 years would be very long. But for example, for the next year, I already know it's going to be a master's, so I need to do my master's. Afterwards, obviously, I do have ideas, but then the implementation of those ideas, I'm not too sure how long it's going to take.
Would that be your own business?
It would be, potentially, yeah, it would be. But then the one that I have would be based in another country. So it would involve a lot of changements and changes that in my entire life. So it's hard to say, to affirm basically, I'm going to do this, this is going to happen, and there's not going to be anything else. So I think it's better to say, as Gregorio said, for the following 3 years, everything is planned, sort of, but not directed to one single thing. Yeah, not to one single thing. I'm open to anything, very open to anything, because I like discovering new things as well. Yeah.
Have the core, but
for me, I've come to a crossroads now, so I have choices to make, some pretty tough choices coming up. So I have either, as Rety mentioned, choice for a master's that I'm going to keep the options ready, and then I'm going to just take a breath, see what I really want, and then go for it. I have the choice to obviously don't have it yet, but then I'm going to pursue, try to get a job. If not that, I do have an idea that I want to implement for a startup. So I have 3 paths right now that, again, this is not something that's going to be achieved in 5 years, but then this is for the first year. So given that I take a master's, that's a year. After that, following 4 years, I'd like to go out probably in the corporate world. By corporate, I don't mean big companies, because I'd like to get some exposure into startups as well, the startup environment, because it's constantly changing, not only in London but also in India. The startup environment and even the investment environment is changing a lot in the venture capital environment. So that's something that I'm interested in. After a master's, or even if I don't take that route, I have the choice of starting up a company, hopefully, implementing this idea and then taking it from there. But both of these do lead to the same thing, that I want to start my business eventually. So given in the 5 years, either I take the master's route, I get some experience, and then I go for my own, what I want to achieve, or I straight away start what I want to achieve and then I work towards it.
If you could choose anyone in the world to be your mentor,
Wow.
who would it be?
That's a very good question.
I trust my family, first of all, and I trust some teachers as well, I would say. Particular one, I don't know if we can mention it, but
yes, please,
I used him already. Well, Ioannis is a teacher that we've got, and I trusted him already. It's just a brilliant person.
What type of teacher? What's his surname?
Christodoulou. It's a Greek surname. It's a bit challenging. Christodoulou, and he's a senior lecturer in strategy, business strategy. And I asked him already for somehow when I got into
At Westminster University.
Yeah, exactly. I was into a dilemma, didn't know what to do, and I obviously asked my family, my uncles, because they're both entrepreneurs as well. They fail and got back on track, so I want to ask them as well. My dad, but then I asked him as well, and he was just pretty helpful. This person, if I have to choose a mentor, I think I would choose him as well. And there is another lady as well. She's called Susana Kislenko. She was my leadership teacher in Spain. She's a Canadian with Ukrainian roots, and again she's very passionate. She's very helpful as a mentor. She does mentoring as well, obviously. That's why when I had this dilemma, I even Skyped her, and she tried to guide me towards the right direction.
What key qualities do you think a mentor should have, for you in particular?
They should be able to listen to my trouble, try to put themselves in my shoes, even not too much, and don't give you the solution, but make you reach the solution by yourself, trying to mold your thoughts, which is what happened with Johannes and Susanna as well. Like giving you tips, giving you advices, but without telling you you should do that. I think these people, they're able to look through you and just guide you towards the right direction and the right goal, but without really telling you that. So they make you think, they make you reach that decision basically without telling you. So listen and make you elaborate your thoughts, thinking already what they believe you want. So I don't know if it's clear or not.
Yes, it is. So these people are really already functioning as your mentors. If you could add somebody else,
No, I don't know. I think I try some people
you're
that
totally happy with them.
Well, no, of course
Yes.
I would have somebody else in my life, but like I can't really say, Richard Branson or...
No one springs to mind.
Because you don't know them. They might be very good, but then when you meet them, you talk to them, you don't like them. So before I trust somebody to be a mentor, I need to have to do with them. So I see there is a good, like Johannes, I had him for 7 months before going to ask something to him. Susanna, I had her for a year before I got to ask her something as a mentor, because you don't know how they work. They might be the most smartest people and the most entrepreneurial, the most understanding people, but then you don't have feeling with them. So I wouldn't go as a mentor. It could be the best mentor in the world, but if I don't feel
the emotional connection is important too.
There needs to be something, otherwise that's why I can't really say anything but something that I either already experimented or somebody already known. So
what are your views, Shaurya, on that?
The last point, I think I really agree with him on the emotional connection, because if you don't really have that connection, if you're just suddenly placed, the mentor and the mentee are just placed together, and you're like, okay, now you can go along, helping each other. I think there has to be, probably a meeting where you first engage, in a conversation with them. You try to get to know them. Obviously, apart from what they're known for. So, if this is the business context or something, maybe they might be in a senior position, or maybe it might be an entrepreneur. You already know that, but then you need to see the other side to it, probably the way they think, the way they guide. You might be a very good entrepreneur, as Greg said, but you might not be the best mentor, because you need to have a set of, it's not skills, but then you need to be a very good listener. First of all, you need to have the knack for catching things and probably putting things together, because the whole point for a mentee is that they know what they're doing, but they don't know what they're doing. And you need to guide them. You don't need to tell them, you need to guide them. Again, as what Greg mentioned, because you're going to have all these things in your head, you have these ideas, you're going to tell them, okay, I'm thinking of this, I have this problem, I'm currently doing this, however, X, Y, Z is happening. And they should be able to hear you out and then pick up on those small things, put it together immediately, obviously, and then tell you, okay, why don't you look at this? You already mentioned this. Things might be right below your nose sometimes. You just need somebody to tell you. And that's what probably a mentor is sometimes. It doesn't have to be something very complicated. It's sometimes even the obvious that you need just someone to tell you. So these are a few things, again, just reiterating what Greg said, that I'd probably look at for a mentor.
Rety, what do you think?
Well, I totally agree with both of them. Mentors are, obviously, there is a difference between sharing knowledge and guiding someone. So I totally agree with what they both said. It's about building a relationship with your mentor and making sure that you actually get a proper guidance, instead of just receiving a bunch of knowledge and then leaving you to deal with it. It's very everything should be based on the guidance for me. Yeah.
What about human stories? Which human story has grabbed you most in your lives?
Personal or whatever?
It can be your grandmother's human story or Steve Jobs' human story. Which human story has grabbed you most and why were you so taken with it?
I'll go first. You gave a good hint. I'll go for my grandfather. He started out from a family where nobody had a university education. He was the first one in the family to get a university education. He went on to do a doctorate. He started out from the lower ranks, from a starting position within Tata Steel, and he went on to become the board of director within Tata Steel. He was in that company for 42 years. So that journey of him in those 40 years, from changing and he was dealing in something that has to do with humans, because he is in the HR, industrial relations, and steel and industrial relations, you know how it goes, because you have workers who are always probably on strike, or you need to cater to their needs. So if I'd say on the human side of it, it's him, because he was a kind of person who was very, you could feel his presence in the room once he was there very much, and he was a very calm person, and he would know how to negotiate and how to even deal with people or fight for his, the workers or even the employees of the company. And it was such a change that in those 40 years, once he did get up to a position, there was no position within the board that had the position of IR, Industrial Relations, or HR. They made one specifically for him, and since then they have been keeping that position. So you can imagine in the 90s they were focusing on all other aspects, and they weren't looking at the human side of Tata Steel. And he published a book also, on that. So he could see that how from where he started to where he was, he went on to probably he was a visiting lecturer in the biggest business schools in India. He went on to even in the ILO, International Labour Organization, he held conferences. So that journey that he had all the way to the position that he was at, that's something that really I didn't know about it because obviously I was a child, but then when I heard it from him, the stories that he told me, that really got to me, and that's someone who again I aspire to achieve so much. And it's not just in a career or milestone or something. The people that he's impacted, even till he was there, they used to come and meet him because he had the connection that he made. He'd impacted their lives, and they always remembered him for it, and they would always occasionally come to meet him, give us greetings and everything. So that's something that human touch, or that extra thing that you do for somebody or someone, that really touched me.
What is your grandfather's name, and what was the name of the book, please?
The book's name was The Human Side of Tata Steel. That's one of the books that he had written, and his name is Surendra Nath Pandey.
Thank you very much. Gregorio?
Well, I may start saying that I admire any person, like, for instance, his granddad, people that believe in what they want to do, they want to achieve something, and they keep on believing, and there's many in the world, so you could pick many examples. So I'm sure he did with his grandfather. I could do the same with my grandfather, for instance. So he studied as well. He became, I don't know how to translate this title in English. It's perito tessile and perito chimico. It's all related to textile and the chemistry related to the textile, fabrics and all these. And he opened their own, 3 generations ago. So with his father, they opened these company. They were started supplying all the machine for working textile. Obviously first in the area, then it became bigger, and then the whole north and central Italy, and then Switzerland, part of Germany. So they become bigger and bigger with all the main fabric producers at the moment, which are like Loro Piana and Jericho Cerruti, all from the area there. So from alone with his dad, by the time of my father joining the company and the 2 siblings, he had already maybe 15, 20 people, and then it got increasing. So, I admire these people that they believe in what they want to do, and they just go ahead until they reach that, and they keep on going, they never stop. And that I can take example of my granddad. I mean, it's a different story as to what he did, because mine was more like entrepreneur, like they created a separate organization, but still it doesn't, you know. And I can link it to my uncle as well, because when the crisis came, obviously they had to diminish everything. So what he did, he recreated himself. So he started a...
What was his name? Your grandfather's name and your uncle's
Guido
name?
Davico, my uncle Claudio Davico. So what he did, they diminished everything, obviously, because of the crisis, you know, the textile in North Italy, whatever, that happened. So he recreated himself as entrepreneur. So he put up a new brand for made-to-measure shirts. He started, and then he moved to made-to-measure suits, trousers, and everything. And now he's got a boutique in Biella and one smaller in Milan, but he's trying to expand. Obviously, he worked a lot, and I admire him so much as well for these, because it's people that the entrepreneurial skills of never giving up, like I take the risk, if I fail I start again, it doesn't matter. So I admire these kind of people, and the people that they created themselves, people that they believe in their ideas, they believe in what they feel. And if I had to take an example of a real example of people known in the world, I may mention also Nelson Mandela. He was fighting for what he believed all his life. Doesn't matter if they locked him up, if they, you know, this kind of people that they, doesn't matter, I believe in that and I will go for that. Or Che Guevara, okay, it's not the best example, he was a guerrilla, so he was a fighter, but he was a doctor, and for what he believed, to free whatever he felt he wanted to free, he went to fight. I mean, he was a doctor, he had his life, it doesn't matter, but you know, these type of people, that's the inspiration or admiration, admire.
Richard?
Yeah, for me, I'm actually going to take the situation of my father. He basically started. He's now a lawyer, but he started his education without much support from the parents in Congo. So he had to finance everything by himself. When that got done, obviously he built the family or everything that is around it. But in 1996, the civil war broke down in Congo, so we had to leave the country. We went first to Kenya. From Kenya, we went to another country, and then from that country, we went to Belgium. So he basically let us think, guys, okay, there is something happening, but he made it like it was basically we're going on holidays instead. Of let us think, guys, okay, you need to be scared, something bad is happening, let's move, let's run. No, he made us think, guys, we are fine, everything is all right, let's go on holiday. We left the country, we went from another country to another country, and from that country to another country. And while I was growing up, I actually realized that my dad did many things, but I was just too young to realize it. And I actually discovered that he built a company called Héritier de la Justice, in Congo, and the aim of that company was basically to give a voice to less wealthy people in terms of all the entire legal aspect of life. So everything that is human rights, basically. And I found that very interesting because I didn't know that aspect of my dad. So in terms of human stories, I think that's something I really, really appreciated, and it also has impacted me as well in my life to just to consider whatever is happening around me, but also to do things for other people and to make sure that they actually enjoy, but also can improve themselves from whatever you're doing with them or for them. Yeah.
You have a very multicultural background, lived in many different places, speak many, many different languages. Has that impacted your view of politics? Are you political?
Open-minded.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. We're very open-minded. For me, personally, I am open-minded because I know the situation in Congo, and then I lived in Belgium for the majority of my life, so I know the situation in Belgium as well, and now I'm in London seeing also the situation. So political, maybe not that much, but open-minded. Yeah.
Well, I had and I have my ideas that they obviously. The more you visit the world, the more you become globalized, the more you meet people, the more you calm them down. So, yeah, open-mindedness. That's what I feel about politics. I've got my own ideas, obviously, but you're more open to listen to other people. I think that's a sign also of cleverness. Like if you're more willing to listen to others and listen to their idea, you can mold your own idea despite being on one side already. So, and that happens on the political side as well for me. And the more I travel, also I love traveling as well. Like I've been to some countries in Asia. I'm going back now. I'm going to India, whatever, and that helps as well because you see also how politics works in the other countries outside of Europe, and that helps you to mold and shape your idea in that essence as well.
If you as a group of three had the opportunity to change politics in any way, given the fact that particularly in the developed world, very, very few young people are really interested in voting, at least that's what the statistics say.
Yes.
What would you do? Let's say if tomorrow you launched a new political party,
Maybe it's better we don't say.
what would you do?
I think people need to. I understand why you're asking the question, because the youth aren't really interested in politics anymore, and I think I did see a statistic for that. At least the United States, where there's little to less interaction by them. So if we were to start a political party tomorrow, I think you need to hear them out. Probably first of all, biggest thing is to get their attention, because I think the youth nowadays they're just everywhere. You say the world is digital, so they're literally everywhere. There are a lot of distractions that, in today's times. I'd say personally, I've seen a lot of distractions, within friends and others. The feeling of being focused or seeing people focused or driven. You don't see that as much. At least I don't see that as much. You see people, they're distracted. They don't want to do what they have to do. So it's sort of pushing things away. So probably address that first, is to get their attention, and then secondly, explain why we are here and how is it going to impact them. So people do that. It's not like political parties aren't doing that. It's just that probably they aren't doing something right on the way.
Why are they not getting through to young people?
I think there's too much talking. I think
And not enough action.
Yeah,
but that's talking without knowledge to me.
Yeah,
And the ideas they share are not usually attracting the young people, I guess.
you need to really get their attention. Even if it's 5 minutes, let's say, you need to put the idea across. You don't need to beat around the bush. You need to go straight to the point and say, look, the reason I'm contacting you, the reason you're out here, and why I'm telling you this is because it's going to impact you here, this way, this way, this way. If you don't really, if you aren't really interested, or if you think that this is not something that I'm just saying for the sake of getting elected, it's too bad. Then you can't change the that's where I go to. The attitude of the youth has to change. I think over the years, people's attitude has just gone from, you see times are changing. Times are actually changing. People's attitudes and behaviors are changing. So you need to see how. Obviously, once you get the attention, you need to really address it in that very concise manner, how it's going to impact. So if it's a student, you say, most important thing is employability, tuition fees. So you hit where it really matters. You don't talk about immigration. Okay, if they're international students, yes, but then you don't talk about national security and everything. Okay, yes, to some extent that's important, but then it doesn't really. It's not affecting the day-to-day life. So that's what I think if I were to address, or if we were to address, that's how we do it.
You're affiliated with a European organisation. What's your view of Brexit?
Well, we had actually a talk last week and even a meeting with other people regarding this. Personally, I think on the political aspect, not much is going to change, but it's more on the commercial aspect that if it happens, there might be a lot of restrictions or things to change for the UK companies, but also for other companies. But in terms of the political aspect, the UK, for me, from what I think or what I know, they anyway are operating on their own rules, sort of. But then if they retract themselves from the EU, not much is going to change because they still have their rules. So that's my opinion personally. But then it's a bit it's between the two. I don't have one specific opinion about it because obviously it's not a win-win situation. Let's say like this.
I may start from the point that I believe a lot in Europe. I think it's the greatest example of union in the world, much better than USA, much better than anything else. I must say that I had teachers that were from the European Commission, so they kind of shaped my thoughts on in this regard. So just enhanced my belief in Europe. And I think that being in a very globalized world, so everything's more globalized, going in a local separations, like, separate UK from Europe, is not a great step. And I know they're based in I understand these because of the immigration. I know the English people, they feel a lack of identity at the moment, so that's why probably they want to come off of that. That's why they call the referendum, because loads of people, they felt a lack of identity, so they want their identity back. But first of all, I think it's a bit too late, because now it's too globalized, everything. You've got loads of immigration. I agree with the fact that everything should be more controlled, so put limits on immigration, because that's the key fact of the call of the referendum for me. So I hope they're going to stay in Europe. I'm going to vote, and because I'm citizen here for over 6 years, so I'm going to vote. I hope they're going to stay in Europe, because I think it's better. I think loads of FDI is going to be taken out from here, despite the fact that to convince people to come out of the English people to come out of the Europe, I'm reading loads of what I can say fake for my point of view, but loads of not really correct information about, we're paying these, we're paying that, and not getting anything back. They're just trying to force a hand on that, but each one has its own way to convince people, so I accept that as well. I just would like that more acknowledgement on the fact would be among the population and the citizens of the UK, because I think loads of misinformation is around on this fact. But my view is that we should stay all together as a Europe. I understand the big difference. I understand that they made a mistake with the euro because there's too much difference between north and south, so we lost our monetary independence and policies and stuff, so we got affected. So I understand all of these, but still I think we should try to go ahead and keep on with these projects which is called Europe, and don't separate from that, just stay more together.
What would your call to action be to try to persuade people to vote?
To vote? Well, the fact that you need to be aware, so increase the acknowledgement that is not only a right but is a duty, because that is going to affect the world where you're living. So you have to do that. It's as well, again, it's a duty, because you're going to live in this world, so the decision that you are not going to take, they're going to affect you anyway. So please take a decision. Yeah. Because if you don't take it, somebody else is going to take it, so you didn't even give yours to this decision, which is going to happen anyway. So just put yours. It's a duty.
For me, I'm technically, I've been living here the last 4 years, but then I've been otherwise and outside of obviously the EU thing, and obviously living here and seeing this referendum come up. Again, everything has there's two sides to everything. So the English people obviously have their view on how probably I think it has something to do with the north, how the employment and manufacturing and the mills and everything have shut down. Everything is concentrated to the south, jobs-wise and everything. And obviously, you have all these stats and everything coming up that the UK is paying
2 million. around 2 million.
Some number, and then they aren't getting enough money back or something. And again, if the UK does exit, the EU, what I think is it doesn't affect me a lot because I'm already on a visa. So people who are Greg and Rety, obviously they'll be more affected depending on what regulations and everything will change a lot. I don't know how. There might be some sort of instability. I think there's definitely going to be some instability because if people, this is a big change. But then if this were to take into effect, this is not something that would be achieved within 6 months. I think it would take a year or 2 years, really regulation-wise and business-wise and everything to really see the impact. The impact is not immediate. The reaction would be immediate within, by people. But then the actual, what you'd see visually and around you and hear about or read about would be, I think, 2 years down the line.
As one last question, what would you say to younger people listening to this interview, setting out on hopefully bright futures like yourselves, maybe going through tough times, wondering whether to take that leap of faith? What would you say?
I would say to never give up on something and to discover that as much as you can in life. Very shortly.
I think we've already said before something like it, but yeah, again, believe in yourself, never give up, go for what you feel, go for what you love. If you fail, don't worry, you're young, it's never too late, get back on track and try again.
Yeah, I think you, I'd go for, you think it out, you plan it out, you map it out before you go ahead. So make your plan A, plan B, plan C. Have, if you need, your support systems. But again, I don't mean support systems by means of you being dependent on them. They are somebody who you can refer to if you're lost, like a mentor, somebody close to you. But definitely do take risks now, because you don't want to have this feeling later on in life that I wish I could have, or what if, what the ifs and buts, you need to avoid them. So you'd rather make a mistake now, probably a year from now you make mistakes, you're back in the same position that you were, but at least you know that you went down that path and you tried it, but you learned on the way. Okay, you weren't successful, but then now for a fact that this option has been, you've taken this option, you've seen how viable it's not viable, you're back on track now, same position. Now you'll be better informed in taking a decision later on. So,
if I can add something to that, our generation, we don't read a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that the next generations is going to be worse, because with the technology and everything that's happening around us, people are going to read less and less. So I think reading, it's also a major thing that young people should do, because the secrets of life are anyway in books. Yeah.
And inform yourself on things that are useful, not only silly social media news or celebrities. Like read newspapers, read proper newspapers, The Economist or whatever you feel like. But inform yourself in science if you like science, but on that essence. And if I may add something on what he said, I think that each person goes ahead in different ways. So he mentioned about planning and have plan B, C, which I would do that as well. But some other people, they might be just go ahead, take the risk. If you fail, there we go, another plan A. So that's, I think, it's
probably
more that.
Hold on before you really, get along doing it. Just hold, pause, think about it, and then do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just think a bit. You can do it, go with the flow, but then obviously you need to be lucky, I think, if things, click. But then I think in today's time, there's so many things happening every time that you need to sometimes just pause, look around, see what the environment is, because there are a lot of external factors that might just affect it. So that's my suggestion.
Rety, Gregorio, Shaurya, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.